Are you a caregiver? If not, you probably know someone who is. There are over 53 million caregivers in the United States. That equates to every 1 in 5 Americans in this country is a caregiver. There is an estimated $600 billion in caregiving costs every year that is unpaid. None of us have becoming a caregiver on our radar. Quite often, it just happens. An emergency happens, and the next thing we know is we're thrust into the role of being a caregiver, and that's what happened to me last year with my mom. It was never on my radar to become a caregiver, and I had proclaimed just months earlier that I couldn't be a caregiver. It just wasn't in my DNA. I really thought my mom had much longer to live. She was living in an assisted living, and I thought she was doing okay. We knew she had cancer, but the oncologist had told us that it was slow growing. But then I get the phone call from my mom on a Sunday night, and that's when everything really started to spiral downward. As a realtor, I focus on helping seniors to determine the best place for them to age in place, whether they're staying where they are or moving into some type of a senior living community. And when talking with adult children of seniors, I also emphasize the need to make a plan so that you don't become that family in crisis when you get the phone call in the middle of the night that mom or dad has to go to the hospital and the doctor tells you that they can't go back home because they will have to have 24/7 care and they can't be left alone. All of a sudden, you have become a family in crisis because you hadn't had the conversation with mom or dad to find out what they would want in this situation. Well, we became that family in crisis last year with mom. I got the phone call from her on a Sunday night that she was severely hemorrhaging and needed to go to the emergency department. I met her at the hospital at 11 o'clock at night. She stayed in the hospital for a week. And while she was there, we thought, okay, the doctors would just stop the hemorrhaging and she could go back to the assisted living. But it didn't happen that way. Her medical team started using the words hospice and palliative care. We had not heard those words from mom's oncologist before. And then we found out that the assisted living where she had been living could not take care of her new set of medical needs. So we became that proverbial family in crisis. So what do we do now? My frail 93-year-old mom decided that she would go under hospice care. But we needed a place for her to live because returning to the assisted living wasn't an option. So my husband and I talked, and we thought the best place for her to live her final days was to come and stay with us in our home. And mom found great comfort in knowing that she would spend her final days surrounded by family. We decided to use Gentiva Hospice to provide the hospice care for my mom. I was having a hard time wrapping my mind around the fact that mom was being placed in hospice. And although my husband is a hospice chaplain, I still didn't know what being placed under hospice care really meant. I must say that Gentiva staff showed great empathy and were more than willing to provide whatever help possible to my mom and the family as we walked through mom's final days. On Friday morning at 9 o'clock, we met with the representative from Gentiva Hospice in mom's hospital room, and she explained everything to us, and she determined the equipment that mom would need to live in our home. She ordered a hospital bed, bedside table, oxygen tank, and other things that we thought mom would need. And by 5 o'clock that Friday afternoon, it was delivered to my home. So my husband and I spent the weekend trying to get everything arranged and ready for mom to move in. I thought that mom, when she arrived, that she would be mobile like she was before this emergency happened. She could go to the bathroom by herself, she could take showers using the shower seat, and I thought she'd be able to go to the dining room table for meals. I thought she'd be able to continue doing her adult coloring books and adult sticker books. But this medical emergency caused a drastic decrease in her mobility that we had not anticipated. And when she moved into our home, she was barely able to stand and shuffle to her recliner. She moved from her bed to her chair for a few times, but other than that, she became bedbound. I had to wrap my mind around this new norm because that was not what I had anticipated. Mom moved into our home on Memorial Day, May 26, 2024, and I'll never forget that day. Medical transport brought her and placed her on the hospital bed, and for 70 days, Mom never left that room until she passed on August 5th. The doctors had told us 4 to 6 months, and so I kept thinking, okay, 6 months will be around Thanksgiving. Maybe she'll be with us for Thanksgiving. But it was not meant to be. Mom lived 70 days with us. My husband and I had previously purchased tickets to fly out to Reno to visit friends that Friday after Memorial Day, and it couldn't have been at a worse time to be going on a short vacation. With everything going on to get her moved into our home, I'm thinking there is no way I can fly out to Reno on Friday morning, just a few days after Mom moved in with us. The family was determined that we were going, and so they made a schedule and they came in and stayed with Mom 24/7 while we were gone. And we returned on Monday, and reality hit me. I was a caregiver. I was working on real estate transactions, so we had to have paid caregivers come in for 6 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and I handled the weekends. The first couple of weeks, I didn't go anywhere when they arrived because I thought, well, what if Mom needs something? What if she wants something and they don't know where it is? So I thought I had to stay even though I had a paid caregiver. I would go into the dining room so that I would be in hearing distance in case Mom needed something or the caregiver needed something. I didn't realize that I was just wearing myself down. It was stressful, and every day became more and more stressful as a new norm began to really set in. I had no idea what being a caregiver was like. I had no clue about the extreme stress and physical and mental tiredness of constantly caring for someone. It can turn your world upside down. And there's also a level of guilt that you feel if you think you aren't doing everything possible for this person. You want to be there for them in every way that you possibly can. And in doing so, I did what so many other caregivers do. I pushed my own needs and my own health concerns aside to take care of her. I began to get burned out, and I can remember so many mornings I would wake up, and during my morning prayer, I would ask God to just help me to get through that day. It was just one day at a time. And then I started to notice the decline, and hospice was noticing the decline as well. Initially, I began to notice a decline in my mom's health from 1 week to the next week. And then I started to notice that the decline was more frequent. I'm remembering that the oncologist told us 4 to 6 months. So why is this happening? Hospice started using the word transitioning. The nurse started coming every day. I began to realize that Mom would soon be gone. I would walk by my mom's room and I would think, how much longer is she going to be with us? None of us anticipated that it was going to be this quick. She never came out of that room. All her meals were in that room. Everything for her happened in her space. Mom told her sister that she felt like a queen in her new room. And to know that Mom felt that way made it all worthwhile. Being a caregiver is hard, and I never really knew how hard until I became a caregiver myself. I just want to share with you a couple of things that I found to be important for caregivers. A large percentage of caregivers die before the patient does, and that is why self-care is so important. One option you have for self-care is called respite care, and a lot of people don't know about respite care, but there are senior living communities or nursing facilities that will allow you to take your loved one into their community for a period of time to give you an opportunity to get some rest from caregiver duties. Your loved one stays in this community or facility, and you know that their needs are being taken care of while they are there. It does have a charge associated with it, but I think it is something that you might want to check into. And another ideal is just get out and go for a walk or go out to meet a friend for lunch. One thing I would do was in the mornings when the paid caregiver would come in, I would leave and go to the senior center. And I would spend maybe 30 to 45 minutes just walking. This was my mental break from caregiving, and it gave me an opportunity to talk with other people who had been caregivers in the past. It is so easy to become isolated. And when you are a caregiver, you don't go out anymore. You don't go have coffee with a friend anymore. You don't go out and see a movie anymore because all your time is spent either working your full-time job or being a caregiver. And it's even harder when you have children that you're caring for in addition to aging parents. So I encourage you to get out and do something for yourself. It might only be once a week, but the key is to just do it. You need that break. You have to think of it as essential for you to do this, to lower your emotional stress levels and as a mental reset for you. The 70 days that I was a caregiver were some of the most difficult days of my life, but I would do it again for my mom. I definitely look at being a caregiver in a totally different way than I did before. I know the importance of taking care of yourself. The number of caregivers in this country is only going to increase as our population continues to age. And it is essential that we find ways to support the over 53 million unpaid caregivers in our country.